I can talk. Please can hear me.
Hi, Clarence.
Hey. Who's all there?
Well, me and Eric just showed up. There's more on the way. You're one of the first ones here.
Aha. That's unusual, huh?
Well, you're usually not the last one.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. There's more coming here. Hang on. Hi, Eric.
Hi.
We lost Tim.
Oh, you're right. Something happened to my
Somebody
camera
found
just
me.
ago.
I'm back.
Okay. I think I accidentally hit my camera and knocked it off. Okay.
You look better.
I look better? Yeah, right.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Bo. That's what friends are
bet.
for, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Hi, Mary.
Hello, Bo. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I will mute myself when my dog starts acting up, which is about 3 minutes from now.
Okay.
He's consistent.
Okay.
You've scolded him enough, so at least he behaves 3 minutes. Huh?
No, it's accidental.
Hey.
Okay. Huh. Slow in coming.
Yeah. Peter and Kay are on the way, although they were here, I thought, and then
Well,
they
they're
weren't. But they're supposed to be joining here, it says.
okay.
But I
Well,
don't,
their screen is up. It's black. Peter,
Oh, yeah?
are you there? No, they aren't.
and
They're getting there.
no one else in the waiting room at the moment. I don't know.
Okay. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing better. I did something to my knee or the tendon, and Sunday and Monday I just couldn't even walk.
Oh,
And so I just iced it and elevated, and I'm walking today. So I think it must have been just a strain of a tendon or something. But when that happens, it's like you can't walk. It's terrible. And I have no idea what I did.
ah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, glad you're doing better now.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm bracing myself for the cold weather about to descend upon us
Oh,
or
yeah.
continue.
The next 2 days don't sound good.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Hang on, I'm having some troubles here. So,
Hi, Diane.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hey,
I'm
Diane.
fine. I'm fine.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh, welcome.
That is not my dog.
All you dogs. Oh,
let's see, Diane, let's see.
yeah.
We lost your picture or something. I don't know.
Well, I have Diane.
Yeah,
Diane's on my screen.
mine too.
Mhm.
I don't
I
know.
think we'll work on getting a new computer for you.
Yeah, we're still,
Tricky.
yeah, I'm doing that on purpose because I'm going to be listening, but I have to wrap my antique baby swing that goes out tomorrow.
okay. Okay. So you don't want us to watch you, huh?
Exactly.
Let's see here. I've got,
Donna.
We're here.
Oh, there. Hi, Peter and Kay.
Hi.
Hi, Peter and Kay.
Hi. Hi. Hey, Bo, how you doing?
If I was any better, I'd be twins.
I don't think I can stand it.
I don't think anyone else could either.
God bless you, Bo.
He does.
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
I was wondering who L10 was. I didn't recognize that. So.
Oh, I went to the,
There we go. All right. Well, I certainly hope some more are coming, but maybe not. So let's, oh, here's Kathleen. Okay. Okay. Hello, Kathleen.
Oh, I always have trouble getting in there for some reason.
Oh, maybe some other people are having troubles too, because we seem to be a little bit short. Some of our regulars don't seem to be here, but I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, I don't see anybody knocking on the door. So I guess that means we'll begin. I was going to begin with a song. Maybe that's why people aren't joining here. So I'll ask somebody else to close tonight with a prayer, but I was going to begin with the song, "'Tis the Gift to Be Simple." So are you ready?
We're ready.
'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning, we come round right. Amen.
Amen. Very good.
There are some other verses that don't know, and so I'll spare you, but till there's the gift to be gentle, there's the gift to be, I forgot, they had all kinds of verse, but it's mostly known by that first verse. And simple gifts, it's called. And we'll talk about the shakers in a little bit here. But before that, a couple of other things. I probably spent more time on this lesson than I spend on most, and I had it for about 3 weeks, and I just barely got it done yesterday. I mean, I had time to do it, and I kind of put things off a little bit, but it just, and one of the reasons to answer simply is that simplicity is very complicated.
yes,
It's not an easy thing to define. It's not an easy thing to exactly explain, and it's not necessarily an easy
Sure.
thing to observe. So,
no,
so that's my excuse anyway. But we'll begin with that. Besides that hymn, just above it on the lesson, Ecclesiastes 7:29, and it's a quote from the Jerusalem Bible. That verse is a little bit obscure, and that's why this is the translation of the Jerusalem Bible. The different, hang on a second, I see Steve or Robin, somebody's coming in from that family. There's Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hello,
Welcome. We were just about to start, and then I saw you coming.
thank you.
Okay. So anyway, I just sang "'Tis the Gift to Be Simple," but then we're looking at Ecclesiastes 7:29, and that verse is every English translation I looked at, it translates it differently. It must be some obscure words and Hebrew words, and kind of hard to tell what the words were. They're all similar idea, but the Jerusalem Bible says, I find that God made man simple, but man's complex problems are of his own devising. So it's not God's fault if life is not simple, it's our fault. And I think we'll talk about that. In fact, actually, we'll begin with that. with that quote. God made us and intended us to be simple. That is uncomplicated, not simple in the sense of dumb, but which it sometimes has been used, but simple in this, not complicated. But because of sin, we allowed our lives to become difficult and complicated, and in danger of being taken over by an ending list of possessions and desires. I think all of us understand what that means, even if, oh, here comes Shar, even if that is, not our particular our experience, but we realize that it's really easy to get caught up in all kinds of desires and plans and hopes and dreams, and that's what complicates our lives sometimes. I thought, in talking about this, that it probably goes back to the Garden of Eden, when God had good things planned for his people. We don't know exactly how that was going to work out because it never really had a chance to happen that way. But he planted a garden and he just gave them one instruction. And when the temper suggested that God is withholding something good from you. And so the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom. She took some and ate it, and then she gave it to her husband, and he ate it. And then their eyes, both of them, were open. They realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. And what had been a simple existence for Adam and Eve in God's garden quickly became more complicated. And part of the issue that underlies this is the enemy, Satan's temptation of, there's more here than what God has allowed for you. That's I think that's one of the things that spoils the simple life and simplicity for all of us, is that we want more. Or maybe there's more out there, and maybe somebody else has more than I do, and so forth and so on. I did want to make the point, which I believe is true, that, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself a second. I did have that little paragraph. The discipline of simplicity is intended to help us make good choices of how we spend, quotes in quotes, because money we spend, but how we spend our goods, how we spend our time, how we spend our life, intended to help us avoid a lifestyle that is burdened by a constant desire and a need and a wish for more.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, a key to, again, what happened in the garden. If you look at the key words in that account of the temptation, Eve looked at the fruit and saw that it was good for food. It was pleasing to the eye. It was desirable for gaining wisdom. Now, I don't think necessarily that she was wrong in that. Some of that was right. And I assume, I don't really know, but somehow I think that at some point, if Adam and Eve had not disobeyed, maybe that the fruit from that tree would have been suitable for them, but that not yet. I don't know. That's my own idea. Don't write that in stone anywhere. I won't. But the point is, those are all good things that she saw in this fruit, and I don't think Satan was tempting her with evil things. He was tempting her with more. And part of his temptation is, God has been not fair to you. He hasn't, he's got other things he could give you and he didn't give them to you. So here, look at this, try this. Again, that's kind of my interpretation. You don't have to agree with it. If you want to have your own, you can discuss it. I'll listen for a minute. Sean.
I don't know about that, but I really like where you're going here, because when I was reading your notes earlier today, I thought, when we have that, I'm missing out on something, thinking we can never enjoy the blessing of the life God has given us, and we can never enter the rest and know that it's enough and just enjoy. And I thought that was really well said. And anyway, that was just my thought.
Yeah. Tim, when you were saying that, I kind of started thinking that, because that kind of gave me some different ideas about I hadn't thought about. But the tree in the garden was the tree of good and evil. And so God was, Adam and Eve were in the garden with God, and it was all good, and it was pure, and it wasn't evil. But when Satan came in, who was evil, he got them to eat from this tree where the evil was at. I don't know. This is just an idea that from what you just said, I started thinking about it. I thought, well, maybe that tree was where the evil was. And once we partook of the evil, that's when it entered mankind. And from then on, because I was thinking, they were naked in the garden, and why all of a sudden they determined that being naked was evil or bad, and they had to get dressed.
Right.
It's like, it just kind of got me thinking about that. So I don't know. I think that's something to kind of wonder about and see, if that's what it was. But anyhow, you just
It is sometimes said that, and I think this is a reasonable explanation, that evil is not a thing in itself. It's kind of the absence or the opposite of good. It's not a positive quantity. It's a negative quantity. And that kind of fits in with what you're saying there, I think, is that when Satan showed up, he's turns something good into, into a negative. He doesn't, I don't know. If I try to explain it anymore, it won't make any sense, even to me, much less to you. But somehow that evil is not a thing in itself. It's kind of the opposite or the negative of good. But I think there's truth to that. And it works for me. If it doesn't work for you, then that's too bad. No, I'm sorry. Then forget it. Just ignore it. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to say what I said. What I meant, it's too bad, and I'm sorry that I shouldn't have used it. That's what I meant. It's not too bad your fault. It's too bad my fault. Okay. Anyway.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Is this kind of where free will kind of came into play? Man's free will, because he went ahead and done what.
Oh, he said, if you don't like
I'm
it,
not sure I want to go there, because I don't know. I think you might be right about that, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to deal with that. That's a big question.
It was just, when I read that earlier after you gave it to me today, I was kind of like, is that where the free will came into play? Because they went ahead and done what they wanted to.
Well,
without God okaying it.
In some way, in some sense at least, God gave them free will, because he told them, you can do this, but you can't do that. And he left them to respond to that. So in that sense, they had sort of free will. They could obey or not, I guess.
Blood
I don't
sugar
know.
tea, herbal tea.
I want to jump in for a minute. It was certainly the first time the exercise of free will came into play. They already had a will, and they chose wrongly. But I wanted to say something about the whole evil thing. There certainly is evil in the world, and yeah, I know we got to be careful with semantics here, but there is actual evil, and it was that tree was the knowledge of good and evil. It wasn't evil itself, and so there's a distinction there. They had understanding they didn't have before, and therefore, at some point, like you said, Kathleen, decided, well, I guess this is on the evil side that we're naked, or but anyway, I just want to say there is actual evil in the world. It's not just absence of good or whatever, right?
No, I won't disagree with you, Sean. And it's a good point to remember also, too, that Satan was already evil. And of course, there's nothing in the Bible that clearly describes how that came to be. But, well, there is some passages that talk about it. But sometime before creation or sometime before Genesis 1, okay, there was a rebellion in heaven too. And that, okay, I'm not going to go there. That's beyond the scope. But I did want to make
I
the
withdraw the
point.
question.
I'm sorry, Clarence, go ahead.
I withdraw the question.
Well, I'll assign it to you, Clarence. You ponder that and come back with an answer next week. No, I'm sorry. I'm teasing you, Clarence. I tease you. But no,
Yeah.
that's a tough question. It is. There's a lot of stuff that we can't really explain and identify. Well, that's what eternity is for, to
Right.
understand all of that.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you all for bearing with me on that stuff. Anyway, basically, my opinion, at least as expressed here, is that the fruit on that tree was not evil in itself. It was a good thing. I don't think that Eve was mistaken in thinking this looks like it's good for food and looks desirable and looks like a good thing. She was mistaken in saying that I'm going to go ahead and try it right now, when God had already said, no, you don't touch that tree. Well, he didn't say don't touch it. He said don't eat from it. Satan is the one that said don't touch it. So Satan that's something that Satan does with his temptation sometimes. He kind of stretches God's command and stretches it out of shape a bit. So that's another little point there. Anyway, that desire for, I think, that's what I argued here anyway, and you can take it or leave it. The desire for more is, there's something wrong in that, kind of inherently, that idea that I don't have enough, I need more. And we all know that from our own life, right? Maybe it's more obvious when we're young, maybe not, but maybe when we're young, sometimes our first experience with that, whatever it is, it could be different things. All I want for Christmas is this. And, okay, a baseball bat, okay, let's say for a boy. And you get that baseball bat for Christmas, and then 24 hours later, you're looking around and says, what else did I get? What else is there? And that's not just, I'm not picking on children, that's something for adults too. Sometimes we may have hoped and dreamed for something special, for this new car, this house, whatever, you can fill in the blanks there, and you get it. And are we satisfied? Well, yes, sort of, but we want more. I want more. Just like Oliver Twist. Excuse me. I should have brought him into it. It's not necessarily wrong to want more. I don't want to leave that impression that I mean that either. More can be a good and necessary thing, can drive us forward and so forth and so on. But it can also destroy us if we just live with, I have to have more. And the discipline of simplicity challenges us to question our desires and at least think twice before we strive for more, and to recognize having more seldom simplifies our life. It almost always makes it more complicated. Now, complicated is not in and of itself evil, but complicated is not necessarily good or fun either. So having more does not necessarily make us happier, right? Any comments on that? I'll leave that out there for a second. Anybody want to quarrel with that or talk about, does having more make you happier? I don't know.
No, it makes you want more. You just lust after things you can't really get a hold of and you want it. I know what you're saying anyway.
I'm afraid that's true. Yes.
Well, I think, and in general, just through the years, the decades, we've had new inventions that make our life easier. Well, when they break down, then they aren't so easy to take care of. It's just keeping track of so many more things.
Yeah.
I think our my grandparents didn't have as much to keep in order because they didn't have it. They worked harder, and also in some ways they had a simpler life, even though it was a harder life. But all the machines that we have now that make our life easy, that's great. But I guess I think of it, internet and all that sort of stuff. It makes life easy in a lot of ways, and yet it gets more and more complicated in some ways.
Yeah.
I think sometimes too, people want more and more because they're missing something. There's something lacking in their lives. And if they don't know the Lord, they want to fill it up with things. And so, we need to evaluate, a lot of times people are looking for things and gifts and all that, rather than just looking for the giver, for Jesus to be the gift that we want. And, I think we get lost in the things of the world, especially unbelievers. They're looking for something to fill that hole in their life. And so they keep buying more things and thinking if they get more, that'll fill them up and make them happy. But it's really Jesus that's going to do that. So.
You're right. You're right. That certainly happens. It happens a lot, and happens to us. Does happen, especially to unbelievers, I think. Anybody who knows God and has a relationship with God is a little bit protected against that temptation, although we all face it to some degree from time to time. All right, we could talk a lot more on that, but I'm going to move on to the second page. The second quote that I wanted to mention is the opening verse of the hymn that I sang, Simple Gifts. It is sometimes called a shaker hymn. I was going to talk about the Shakers just a very little bit. The Shakers were, well, I got it in the footnote there, plain people. They lived something like the Quakers and the Amish and the Mennonites and so forth and so on. Similar in beliefs and practices, a little bit more radical. They were like the others, they were communal. In other words, they did not, I'm not sure that they forbade individual ownership. To some extent, you can't completely do that, but basically the community shared everything together. They were millennial in that they believed that Jesus was returning very soon. And they were also celibate, which also kind of set them apart from some of the other groups, and also made it difficult for them to survive. That's why I tried to find out for sure, and I got some different answers, but the best answers I got, there may be one or two Shakers still alive. The last one that they mentioned is someone since they were celibate, they didn't have any children of their own. Okay. And so they survived, if I understand, or they continued by taking care of orphans who were left for them. And the last person that I found that seemed to be alive, and that was about as of 2019, is some orphan that joined the group, maybe 60, 70 years ago or something like that. So that's one of the interesting things. I don't know if you've ever had any experience with some of those plain people. One of my aunts and uncles in northern Wisconsin lived in an area that was surrounded by Amish people who drove horse and buggies. They could not own cars. They could not have telephones. They could not do any of that. They could get a ride in a car, which kind of bugged my uncle and aunt sometimes, because they might hitch a ride with you if you're going into town, or they might occasionally come and use your telephone if they could, because they needed to make a call, but they couldn't own a telephone. And part of that, at least in their case, in that community's case, was unless everybody in the community could afford one, then nobody could have it. So that's why you couldn't have a car, because some people can't afford that. So then nobody, you have to be equal. Interestingly enough, one other little side note here, Our middle son, Phil, and his family live in Hagerstown, Maryland, and there is a lot of Mennonites in that area. Now, Mennonites are related to this too, and Mennonites are not particularly real simple people. They don't necessarily stand out the way they dress, and so wouldn't necessarily know it. But one thing they do, at least in that community, they all drive big black cars. They're not necessarily cheap cars, or they're kind of well-to-do people. They're very prosperous farmers, but everybody drives a black car. Nobody has anything with fancy colors or fancy paint on it. So there's different ways in which they practice that community and commonality. And I'm not trying to make fun of them. I kind of admire them, although I don't know that it really solves the problem of living a simple life. But the Shaker hymn talks about it, and one of the themes we have here tonight that I'm going to talk about is there's just a lot of paradoxes involved with the whole idea of simplicity. Simplicity can be very complicated. That's a paradox. How can something simple be complicated? But it is. But anyway, is it a gift or is it a discipline? Some people might debate that. The Shaker hymn suggests a little bit of both, because it starts out, as I sang, "'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free," which implies that somehow God gives you that gift to live the simple life. But then it also kind of suggests that we have a role to play in it, a discipline, that we must learn to bow and to bend, to turn until we come out right. So I think you can make a case for that. As with some other disciplines, it's both a gift or a grace from God to learn to live a simple life, but it's also a discipline that we have to practice. And when you really look at, as far as I'm concerned, at least most of the disciplines we talk about, it is a bit of a mix. You think of, I guess I put in a footnote the example of prayer. Prayer is a discipline, and anybody can learn to pray. And there's no excuse really for anybody to say, I can't pray. You can learn. You may be shy about praying in public and so forth. I understand that's a little different situation, but you can learn to pray. At the same time, we all know some people who are very good prayers. They just have a knack for leading in prayer. And I don't know, I mean, when you sit and listen to, when you're in a group and somebody's praying and someone who's a good prayer, you just kind of sit, yes, amen. That's a good thing to say. That's a good thing to ask for. That's you know what I'm saying? So I think I get prayer is a gift and a discipline. I don't know, maybe somebody wants to disagree with me on that theory, but I think most disciplines are a combination of both. We depend on God's grace and gift, but we also have a responsibility to learn, to grow, to practice. So that's true with simplicity. Some people may find it easier to be simple in that sense, but we all can learn to do it and need to. All right, the third quote I had was from Richard Foster, who wrote a book, Celebration of Disciplines, which I shouldn't give away my secret, but that's kind of my research book for a lot of what I teach about this disciplines. But he suggests that simplicity is both an inward and an outward reality, and that both of them are necessary. And what I wanted to talk about, and the reason I picked this out, there's other things we could talk about here, but I picked this out on purpose because I think it's important. We normally think of the outward aspect of simplicity. In other words, living a simple life means, not having the biggest house in town, maybe not having to have the biggest house in town, not having to have the fanciest car, not having to have the best clothes or so forth and so on. Living a simple life. And that's what we think of. And we don't have to acquire more things than we absolutely need, and we intentionally shy away from material things of the earth that might keep us from following God more faithfully, from fully experiencing what God has for us. So that's difficult to do, but that we can understand in a way. But the point I wanted to make, if you're just doing that outwardly, if there's no inward simplicity, then it becomes an empty thing. Excuse me. If it really were a matter of just external things, it'd be much easier. Then all we have to do is figure out what's the formula for simplicity. And that's maybe my quarrel with some of the Amish or some of the plain people. If you say, well, the formula for simplicity is we don't have cars. We only have horse and buggy, or we don't have well, one of the things that used to drive my aunt and uncle kind of upset, because these people would kind of move into, and they'd buy a farm and they would take out the indoor plumbing because that was a luxury. So they didn't have to have that. And it just seemed like, yeah, okay, so what you define, I'm living a simple life because, I don't have anything fancy in my house. I don't even have a car. I don't, so forth and so on. Well, what happens with that? What happens with that, it becomes a new kind of form of being a Pharisee. You know how the Pharisee in the parable that Jesus told, he stands up in the temple and he says, God, I'm not like other people. I don't do the things other people do. I fast all the time. I do this and do that. And that's a real danger. Excuse me. That's a real danger if simplicity is only an outward thing. That's an easy thing to do, but what does it mean if it's just for show, just an outward thing? So I'm arguing, and I didn't make this up myself, that it has to have an inward reality in our heart. Are we simple in our heart? I mean, if, for example, to put it this way, if I'm not going to go out and buy a big fancy car because I don't want people to think I'm, showing off, but deep down, I really wish I could have one. There's something wrong with that picture, something that's not really simple or simplicity. If your heart is not there, then what you do outwardly may look good to the world, but it doesn't really mean in your heart you're still thinking those are the good things, those are the things that matter. So an inward simplicity is to say, I really don't need anything other than food to eat and something to drink and a place to stay. And so there is, both of them have to go together. The other side of that coin is that, let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Okay, I've got three characteristics. This is about in the middle of the page there on this page that are characteristic of this discipline, namely to receive what we have as a gift from God, number one. And that's a good challenge for all of us, because we are prone sometimes to say, well, I earned this, I deserve this. And you can fill in whatever you want with this. I worked hard for this car, I worked hard for this house, I worked hard for this job, for this degree, whatever. And instead of acknowledging that what we have is ultimately a gift from God, I'm not putting down work and hard work, and that's a good thing, a desirable thing. But when we begin to think that, hey, I earned this all myself, I don't care what it is and who you are, there's something missing. The second point, to take care of what we have, that's inward simplicity. I don't misuse I don't throw it away, I don't waste things. And then thirdly, to allow our goods to be available for the needs of others. In other words, recognizing it's from God, taking care of it, and being ready to share with others, especially those in need. And the simplicity is also explained in the words of Jesus throughout Matthew 6, and especially in verses 31 to 34. If someone has that handy, would you read that for me while I clear my throat? Excuse me. Someone like to jump in? It's in the middle of the page there, or at the bottom of the page, toward the bottom.
I can do that.
So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans ran after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own.
Okay. I suspect those verses are familiar to all of us. I'm sure we've heard them more than a few times. And yet, if we actually sit and listen to them and look carefully at them, we find out that no matter how many times we hear them, we still struggle with that. We all worry sometimes. What shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what if this happens? What if that happens? We are prone to that. We hopefully as Christians, we battle against the temptation to worry and to complain. But I would challenge all of you, just as I would challenge myself. I would not dare say that I've never worried or that I don't ever worry. Those things do come to mind. And that's why Jesus warns us about it. That's important to be reminded of it. Pagans run after all these things. They don't know any better. Your heavenly Father knows what you need. So seek his kingdom, and all these things will be given to you. Now, I trust that all of you have learned that to some degree. I have learned that to some degree. I'm not putting any of you down or anybody else down. I'm just saying that it is something of a constant struggle for all of us to lay down that word and say, okay, God, it's all up to you. That can be a very hard thing to say sometimes. Sean.
We're talking a lot about material things and stuff, and I know this bridges a little bit into the idea of stewardship, but for me, something I've learned over the years is not just materially staying a little bit more simple and not needing all the stuff, but just my whole lifestyle. I had a friend stay with me, my friend that's the missionary, and I'm so amazed you don't spend any time cooking dinner. You just have everything so simple, and so I carve out more time for things that do matter just by living simply. I don't have to have, 30 different meals every month. We repeat a lot of meals. I cook, I don't take more than 10 or 15 minutes to cook. I keep my clothes simple, kind of routines and stuff. And so for me, that reduces a lot of stress too, and kind of creates a more simple way of living. And it's not just the food and clothes, but just in a lot of ways, just finding simpler ways to doing things and not needing all that stuff and all that activity and everything. So to me, it kind of fits in here.
Oh yeah, no, those are choices we make, and we can do it. All of us can probably do it more simply than we sometimes do. We get caught up in doing things. So yeah, good point, Sean. So gospel simplicity brings life and freedom. It cannot be just an outward matter of counting up how much we spend or don't spend on ourselves. It's got to flow from inside of us. It's not just a matter. I mean, again, I have known. I don't know. I can think of by name particularly, but I know I've known some people who are very, very well-to-do and have a lot of material goods, and yet, as far as I can tell, have the discipline of simplicity and live a simple life. And conversely, I've known some people who live in, right next door to poverty, and that they don't have a whole lot, and yet they are not living a simple life because they're constantly kind of fighting and struggling about it. It's a tricky business balancing it. Again, it's not just what you have or how much you have. It's how you look at things, how you look at the world, and how you're dealing. And again, it's a battle for all of us. None of us have got it all under control. And none of us, we all need to be reminded, don't worry about tomorrow. God will take care of you. So that's kind of the point of or one of the points of this simplicity. Yes, Mary.
Tim, I guess, this, I think sometimes for me, it boils down to, do I really trust the Lord to take care of my life? What do I really need? Not necessarily, anyway, just sometimes I worry about the future and, lose sleep over some things. And, I feel like God challenges me. Do you really trust me? I hear your words, but, your heart is doubting that sometimes. And so I think it's really important with this simplicity. It'd be a whole lot simpler to trust that the Lord will provide as the time comes, and not worry. We've always been told, what does worry do? And, but that's hard to overcome sometimes.
I don't know. I'm just thinking what you said, Mary, and I can think of times in our life, and I'm sure all of you can think of times in your lives when you're wondering what's going to happen. It is helpful sometimes, I think, have gone down that road and said, okay, well, if I don't get this job, or if this doesn't come through the way we want to, what's going to happen? And sometimes it can be helpful just to mentally go down that road and say, well, if that doesn't happen, then we might have to do this, or we might have to do that, or God will have to provide this or open that door. You could come up with different possible answers to that. And that can be a healthy exercise sometimes when you're sitting there worrying and saying, what are we going to do if this terrible thing happens, or if this good thing doesn't happen? Well, let's see, what could God do? He could do this, he could open that, or we could, anyway, it's kind of a game to play, but it's a way of dealing with worry sometimes, just to realize, and it does help you realize that our life doesn't necessarily depend on what is sure and certain ahead of us. Realistically, we don't know anything for sure. Well, we won't go there, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, time to move on here, I think. All right, we can't expect to practice real and true outward simplicity without an inward commitment to simplicity. But if you just, inwardly I'm simple, but if that doesn't carry out into how you live, then it doesn't really matter. That it doesn't really make any difference. So they go together, how we feel about things inside of us, ourselves, and how we actually relate to possessions and all the things that we worry about. Hope that makes some sense. Okay, turning the page to the last page here. As already suggested, we need to avoid the temptation to make laws about how to live simply. We can't, I live simply if I only have 5 shirts and 2 pairs of pants to live on. Then I'm living simply. Well, you can't make laws like that, even if it's only for yourself. But there are some guiding principles that will help us to translate an inward commitment to an outward practice of simplicity. And I didn't make these up. I found these in a few different places, and they make sense to me. We can think in terms of buying things for their usefulness rather than their status. I'm not buying that new suit because boy, it makes me look good, or, it's expensive. I can brag about how much I paid for it, but because I actually kind of need a new suit. I mean, I don't know, that's a lousy example, but that's the one that came to me. But, why are we buying this thing? Is it so that we can kind of show off, or is it something that we need? Okay. And again, this isn't a hard and fast rule. I mean, there's no line here that you can say, well, this is good and this isn't, but just things to think about. We can learn to reject anything that is producing an addiction, producing an addiction in us. In other words, if I just gotta have, let's see, what do I gotta have? I don't know, somebody fill in the blank. I gotta have this, or I won't be happy, or I won't, my week will be ruined if I don't have this. Somebody help me out. I don't know.
My coffee.
What's that?
My coffee.
Oh, your coffee. Oh, no, now you're hitting close to home, Sean. That's Mary, and she knows I have to have my coffee a lot too. But yeah, okay.
It might be where someone, they get a house and they get all this furniture and stuff, and it's like within 6 months they have to get new furniture and it's like they're never happy with what they have, and they have all this time and they don't know what to do with it, so they just keep buying stuff to fill it in. So it's like they have the shopping addiction or something, or
Sure.
whatever.
Well, there are some people I've known who do have literally a shopping addiction. I'm trying to remember where this was, or some, where there's just things stashed in the closet that were bought and never used, when they finally came to clean out the house, because the person really didn't have any use for it or didn't need it. But, so that's we all have some addictions, or some things that are possible addictions, and we have to watch out that we don't let those things control us. So reject things. Third one is an interesting thing. We can learn to enjoy many things without needing to own them. Sometimes, you don't need to own that. It's nice to be able to, I can't think of a good example here, but it's nice to be able to do this once in a while, but I don't need to own it. Maybe this comes out of nowhere here, so maybe it doesn't make sense, but I don't need to have membership in the exclusive golf course. I enjoy playing golf. It's a good thing to be able to do that sometimes, but I don't have to own the membership. I don't have to do that. If I get a chance to do that once in a while, that's great. So I don't know if that makes sense.
It reminds me of my husband, who needs a boat. He really needs a boat so he can go fishing, but it's like, why don't you just go fishing without the boat? But he needs it.
Yeah, well, we all have some of those things that we have to wrestle with. Okay. All right, we can set priorities that flow from loving God above all else. Is God our priority? Is serving God our priority in life? And if that's true, then how does it show? Does it really show in the way we act, in the way we? And I'm not talking about. I'm certainly not just talking about being in church every Sunday, or things that are easily measured. But how does it show to us? How do we know that that God is really? If I was looking at myself from the outside, would I look at myself and say, yeah, it's obvious that you love God more than anything else? Okay, that's a really challenging question, I think. But anyway, that's something to ponder. We can consider downsizing our possessions. We all have to be a little bit careful in this nation of luxury, that we don't just hang on to possessions because we can afford to, because we have them, because at one time in our life this may have been important to us, but I can't get rid of it, even though I don't really want it or use it anymore, or I don't need this, but I'm going to buy it because I kind of like it. It's a nice thing. It's a nice toy. You know what I'm saying. We can seek out simple pleasures to enjoy that require no expense. And such things are available. You can look for things that bring joy, that are inexpensive or even free. We can create more space in our life for loving and serving God. Okay. can commit to free ourselves from envy and entitlement. Two really bad E's there. Envy is, wishing we had what the neighbors had. And entitlement, it goes a little bit further than that and saying, hey, if they've got it, then I'm entitled to it too. Or because of who I am or because of whatever, I deserve this. So be careful about those kinds of things. We can stake our identity in God's love, not in accumulations and possessions. The real measure of your wealth, my wealth, anybody's wealth, is the love of God that has transformed us. That's what makes us valuable. That's what makes us worthwhile, not what we've accumulated or possessed. Okay, all of the three ideas, all three of the ideas we discussed are paradoxical to some extent. Simplicity is both simple and complex. Yeah, it's simple. It's a simple life, but there's a lot involved in carrying it out. Simplicity is both a gift, something we can and should pray for. Lord, help me to live more simply. And then also a discipline that we can practice. And it's both an inward and an outward discipline. The outward life reflects our inward commitment. If we are truly inwardly simple, then it will naturally show in how we live. Okay. And one more paradox here. Simplicity affirms both the goodness of the material world and the limitation of material things. In simple terms, it just means simplicity is not saying material things are evil or they're unimportant or they're unnecessary. No, they're good. They're good. It's hard to live without them. It'd be very difficult. We need some of those things just to survive in this world, right? But misery also arises when people try to make a life out of provision. It's only one ingredient to a happy, a successful, a pleasant life. It's not the only ingredient, and it's not the most important ingredient. I guess end with that quote from Matthew 4:4, when Satan is tempting Jesus and he says, hey, you're hungry, turn these stones into bread. That's a real temptation, right? Boy, if we could turn stones into bread, wouldn't that be convenient sometimes? Jesus said, it's written. He doesn't say bread is worthless, but he says, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. And so that's kind of a reminder of what's important. And the point of this is that material things are important, but they're not at the top of the list. That's not the most important thing in the world. Does anyone have any additions or thoughts or questions here? I've got a couple more other things.
I was going to mention when you were talking about simplicity and, in a sense, the beauty of it. If we think about things like that, like the sunset, what could be more beautiful than one of those kinds of sunsets? The smile from a little kid. So there's all kinds of things that could bring us joy that, in a sense, are free. We don't have to pay anything. Flowers blooming and all kinds of different things like that. If we just, in a sense, take the time to enjoy them as opposed to rush. I got to get the next thing. I got to do the next job. And don't have time to enjoy any of those things. And I think too many of us, myself included, do that more than we should. And we don't spend enough time appreciating all those things.
And most of the things you mentioned are all things that we can't own. We can't own the sunset. We can't own a flower. I mean, we can own a flower, but we can't own the, So those things are there, and that's something useful to have. So, any other thoughts yet?
I was thinking when we lived in China, the people there had such a simple lifestyle. I mean, they didn't have a lot, but they were happy with what they had, and it was just so much easier to just relate to each other and do things. We didn't have all these distractions. We just got to know each other and do things like taking a walk or watching the sunset or doing any of those kind of things together. Because it's more about, the people and not so much what they had. Because in China, people don't have anything. They just have, one room to live in and, maybe one meal a day if they're lucky. And,
Yeah.
It's very simple life, but yet they make the most out of it. And I think sometimes, we try to complicate God and make him more complicated. It's so simple to just love him and listen to him and let him guide us in life. And yet I think sometimes make God complicated, and he has all these rules and he has all this stuff, and as opposed to he just loves us and wants us to just enjoy that and enjoy the simpleness of it and not worry about all these other things. But yeah, I think God simplicity is something God's given us to enjoy him.
Sure. I had a thought and I kind of lost it here, but in connected with what you're saying, let me think if I can get it back. There are too many things running around in my mind. I'm sorry I lost it, but thank you, Kathleen. You're right. We need to just, we get caught up in things that yeah. Anyone else? Okay, before we close, and I would like someone to, if you would, to close in prayer for me, but for us, but so you can be thinking about if you want to do that. But I was going to share one other thing with you folks that's not related to this lesson, not directly. I'm sure that some of you, as with Mary and I, would have a heart. We have a heart for the Ukrainian people who are trying to escape what's going on in their country, and how you can help. I do have obviously there are many places that are, I'm sure, collecting donations and doing good things, and you probably have access to many. But if you want, I have one I will mention, and if you're interested, you can send me an email and I'll send the information to you. Simply spoken, we have friends missionaries who live in Romania. They are part of All Nations, which is a mission organization headquartered in Kansas City. The international leader of that organization is a friend of ours who we knew in Taiwan, Mary Ho. And anyway, the people there's a couple in Romania that Mary and I know personally that we visited about a few years ago. That are missionaries. Anyway, they are in contact with people who are providing help to Ukrainian refugees. Now, I'm not going to make the pitch here for this or anything, or say this is the best or this is the only. I'm only saying this is a group that I know and I trust, or that we know and we would trust. So if you are interested, if you want to help Ukrainian refugees, and you don't offhand know of a good relief agency or sort of to do that, just let me know and I'll send you the information about this, and you can look at it for yourself and see if you want to do that. I won't be involved in anything you do. I'm just gonna kind of vouching for this. Mary and I will vouch for this is a very legitimate organization. These are people we know, and we trust them that the money will go to help some of those people. I don't know about you, but every hour or two, I might turn on CNN if I can, and I watch some of the news on it, and I watch for about 10 minutes, and then I can't take it anymore. It is just so it is so disturbing, so frustrating to see what's going on. And I don't know that there's an easy solution. I don't have any easy answers for getting over it, but it's very difficult. So anyway, I'll leave it there. If you're interested in that, send me an email and I'll send it back with the information. Okay. And now if someone would close with prayer and help us along in simplicity here.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to learn about simplicity. Help us to look at our own lives and see if we are living the simple life or if we are overly concerned about material things. Help us to know, what to do and what to strive for. Mostly to strive to be with thee and to be in thy word. And thank you for all the people that are here sharing and learning. And thank you for Tim's lesson tonight. And Father, there are so many things that we could pray for. Certainly, as Tim talked about, we pray for the people in Ukraine and pray for the soldiers of Russia who are following orders. And we just ask that you would bring peace to that part of the world, that you would cause the leaders to sit down and to have some conversation and to bring this to a halt. And certainly, Father, there are many people in our church that are ailing in one way or another, and we'd ask you to be with them and to bless Raytown Christian Church. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
all.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next week. Sean is teaching, but I don't remember what.
Spiritual gifts.
What?
Spiritual gifts.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's right. Spiritual gifts. All right. Yep. Okay. All right. We'll see you next week, if not before.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.